Hello and welcome to After the Bell, Mirror Fighting's boxing show, coming to you just hours after Canelo Alvarez stopped Avni Yildirim to set up a unification clash with Billy Joe Saunders in May. My name is Martin Domin, editor of Mirror Fighting. I'm joined again by Barry Jones and by Declan Taylor. We will take a quick look back at what was a very quick fight in Miami last night, and then look ahead to a fight which has been promised many times. Hopefully this time will be delivered. And then also look back at Joseph Parker's win over Junior Fa in New Zealand, which feels a long time ago, but actually was just yesterday. And then ahead to what might be a heavyweight clash between Parker and Derek Chisora. If you are watching live, you can interact with us. Please do share your thoughts and comments about the fights. And please do give the channel a subscription while you're there and the video a thumbs up. Declan, before we come to Canelo's performance and situation, I just want to touch on Avni Yildirim for a second. The last night was his first fight for 2 years. He lost his last fight against Anthony Durrell. Now, I don't want to get into a big argument and debate about mandatory challengers and things like that. But let's be honest. A golden opportunity. He won the lottery, really, getting the fight. Went for as long as he could, protected himself for as long as he could. Saw an opportunity to get out of there and took his money and ran. Fair?
I don't know. He was still in there, wasn't he? And I guess it's hard to. I don't know. It's hard to slate him. Anyone who gets into a mandatory position and gets their title shot and sort of hangs on in there. It's not his fault that WBC mandated him. And we all knew he wasn't on Canelo's level. I was thinking yesterday about if he was to win, how big a shock it would be, and it would have been right up there with biggest shocks ever. And Canelo proved that, like from literally the first second, it was like mismatch. And it's not even. I was in where was it? In Germany. I can't remember what part of Germany, when he boxed Chris Eubank. And obviously Eubank knocked him out in this mad. There was this big build-up that it was welcome to hell and all that sort of stuff. And Eubank obviously knocked him out, and that was years ago. So it wasn't even like he was this unknown quantity. I remember before that fight, he was the guy who knocked out James DeGale's teeth before the Badu Jack fight. Remember that? So there was this little bit of mystique. You know, he's hard. He had this mad manager. You know, real rough and tough. But we all knew that Eubank had knocked him out and got to him, and he doesn't move his head, and he's there to be hit. Canelo, in the end, softened him up to the body and just basically did whatever he wanted for three rounds. I thought he might carry him for a bit, but no interest in doing that. And when they pulled him out, you can't really argue with him pulling him out there. He'd offered absolutely nothing. He was not listening in the corner. He wasn't trying anything different. I thought it was fair enough. But in answer to your question, you know, did he take his money and run? Maybe he did. Maybe. But, you know, you got to be in it to win it. And you got to sort of do the business to get into that position in the first place. And I'm never going to have a go at someone for making £2 million.
Fair enough. Okay, Canelo, Barry, what is refreshing really for me anyway, and I know a lot of people complained about this fight, but Canelo fought 2 months ago. He's going to fight again in just over 2 months. In an era where the best of the best only fight twice a year, we should be grateful that we got to see him, even if it was for 3 minutes against somebody who didn't really want to be there.
Yeah, no, I'm over the moon with this because he's just beautiful to watch against anybody, because, you know, the way he goes about his work is so professional. Actually, to go back to the ring walk, I know they want to like pizzazz it and all the rest of it. It didn't suit him because he's such a professional, and he's so businesslike in every aspect of his game, his preparation in the ring, his interviews, and there's no messing around. He's very to the point in Spanish, so I presume he's to the point. I don't know. I can't speak Spanish, but everything about him is direct. And the whole like fireworks and the rapper with him didn't suit me, to be honest. But apart from that, he's the ultimate professional. And to see him go about his work, how he dissects you, how he intimidates you without doing anything, is only a great fighter can do that. So you know you have a great fighter when he makes a fighter who would be not Yildirim doesn't beat any of the top super middleweights really for me, to be honest. But he would give a go. He would have a go against Saunders, though he get totally outboxed. He'd have a go against Callum Smith, though he'd probably get outboxed and stopped. But you know when you're a great fighter when the guy is afraid to throw a punch, because you just know if you make a mistake. I've been there. When you make a mistake, you know you're going to pay for it, and that's what he does. He hits you early and he intimidates you with the pressure with the feet, and just takes all your game away. But to see if that was a pay-per-view fight, this was the old format on HBO or whatever, and you had to or Sky or BT, whatever, and you had to pay for that fight, I would begrudge it. I'd want to watch it to see him, but I'd begrudge paying for it. The fact it's on a different sort of format of broadcasting where you pay a subscription and you don't pay no extra, then it's great. That's what I would say. That I wouldn't want to pay for that, like £20 or $100 in America to watch that because it was obvious who was going to win and how he was going to win. But to see it for free, pretty much, because you already pay him, it's fantastic. And also, I would take a Yildirim every day of the week if we see him against a Callum Smith and a Billy Joe Saunders every year. It was well worth it, yeah.
It's a good point, though, because that's what used to happen with Mayweather, wasn't it? Is that we knew we'd get him twice a year. For America, it would cost him $100 a go, and then he'd end up boxing the Maidana rematch, which no one wanted to watch, for instance, or like Andre Berto, and you're like, oh, they're so frustrating. But actually, it's not frustrating because it was either see him box again or not at all. So it's like, sweet, I'll watch it, especially for $199. I mean, what a price we're getting for it.
Even if it was like, it's going to be £10-15 in the end, I would imagine, the zone, which is fair enough. If you're a boxing fan, and they get loads of content, it'd be fair enough. But you wouldn't mind whatever you're paying for your subscription, you're paying for it anyway. So if that's included, then fine. If that all of a sudden becomes an extra add-on, then I wouldn't have paid for it. Although I would, because I'm a fool, but most people wouldn't. But there's very few pay-per-views I haven't paid for, to be honest.
Yeah, same.
Very few. But to see Canelo in action, no, and also for young kids to see the way he goes about his work, everything. They're not even little disguises. They're quite obvious disguises. He sort of hooks off the jab, but he feints with the jab. It's sort of a combination that's not used anymore. I don't know why. I sort of do know why, because your left hand's out there, there's always a risk of getting hit. But if your timing's good and you can slide that front foot in to distance in the disguise, he does it, and he quite often jabs high, so he takes away your whole focus goes high, and then you can slide the feet in, and then he shows the left hook, or you'll clip you with the left hook. And there's nothing on it because he hit you with one or two hard left hooks earlier on. He'll flick the left hook across. You're so focused in defending it, and then he fires that big right hand on the middle. Everything he does, there's always a reason, whether it's a good shot or a bad shot, he's doing that to disguise something else he wants to do. And to be able to have that constant, it's muscle memory boxing a lot of the time, but to have that thought process throughout the whole fight means you have to be really intelligent for your sport, and your fitness has to be just tip top. And that's why he's one of the great fighters to watch for young kids, because he's always in shape, ultra professional. He has some discretions about meat, Mexican meat and whatever else, but I mean, the way he goes about his work, it's a great work ethic that he has, and it shows in the ring.
Just another thing, I think we've spoken before about it, Declan. I know you weren't in Miami, but it seemed like he was far more available to media, and he spoke English a lot more. Now, we've said before, listen, it's not on him to have to speak English or whatever, but it is a help. He wasn't even fighting an English fighter. But it does help, doesn't it? It seems like he's sort of growing into maybe his stature as the face of boxing.
Yeah, I remember when he came over to the UK for, I can't remember what, it must have been maybe a Golovkin press tour or something like that. And he was obviously really hard to get to at that time. And he didn't speak any English, and it was all very guarded and stuff like that. And I remember thinking, if he wants to be a massive superstar, he needs to be, it would be ideal if he spoke English like the Klitschko's did, because they dealt with that early and got their English perfect, especially Vladimir. But also be a bit more available, because otherwise you just become this sort of detached figure. And Mayweather, to his credit, with the media, would always speak to everyone. I remember going to maybe the first Maidana fight, and I was astounded by the amount of interviews he did with every single YouTube channel. Everyone got a question if they wanted one. He would stand there, and I was like, why are you doing this? The fact is, he's selling the pay-per-view that day, a few days before the fight. He knows the value of coverage. And I feel like maybe it's part of this DAZN deal. Maybe it's just part of him growing up and thinking, this is my legacy. I want to be known as a superstar. And he's doing it. I must say, though, I do think the bubble situations help with that access, because he's just there, and you know that they can set you up with whatever. And it's great to see him doing some stuff in English with Andy, who went for IFL, and Andy, who went for Boxing Social. Like, fair play to those boys. They're going out to those bubbles and absolutely hoovering up, and they're getting their rewards. And people like Canelo now are speaking to everyone. And I think it's all part of the world today, isn't it? That's what you need. You need to be about. You need to be, your face needs to be everywhere. You need to be talking, and you need to be a brand. And it's not lost on him. I don't know if it's strategic or whether it's just part of his evolution as a person. I would think a bit of both, but it's definitely great to see. And I think it's definitely solidifying this position as proper superstar.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Barry. So, as I said, Canelo's fought twice in a couple of months, and he's going to fight again in 10 weeks. What will I'm assuming his weight cut's not, if there is a weight cut, it's not particularly difficult, so he's not training to lose weight. So what is he, and he's presumably not particularly learning much in between fights, other than maybe some intricacies in terms of who his next opponent is. What does do you think anyway, his training look like between now and May 8th when he fights Billy Joe Saunders?
There's always a rest period because fighting's difficult, but training's the hardest part of it because it's so intense. So there's no breaks. So you need to have a release in everything. Like, you always need to have a release. I remember my first decent payday, my trainer said, take a little bit out and just go and blow it. That was for McDonald's, and that was it. But no, so you have to have a release in it, whatever sort it is, but it has to be short because boxers go wild. But so he has a week or two off, and then you get back in. You go back in easy, but you say this, you're always learning, and you think, I know you say it's not just like learning to fight that opponent. You have to. I think a lot of boxing, people forget how to do the basics, and you see with Canelo, he does the basics well. The things you learn from a kid: hands high, elbows tucked in. In any other sport, at the highest level, they have passing drills. Tackling drills in rugby and passing drills in football, and putting your foot on the ball, looking up, and they'll do that. Even at the highest level, they'll do it. In boxing, you learn how to do the basics. And once you get good, you forget about that. You warm up in skipping, you punch the bag, and you do what you want to do. I mean, very intense. I'm generalizing it, but you forget. And I think he still does that. You can see the way he fights. Every day, he must be doing the basics, hands high, always checking yourself. So you always have to be almost like a perfectionist that you never... you're constantly learning. You have to treat it like that. It's not, I know it's not the case, but you have to treat it like that. So he will go back and structure himself again, keep himself high, and just hone what he's done. And then it's down to Eddie Reneso to say to him, he's his own man, Canelo, but to say to him, right, we're fighting a guy who can move now with Saunders. This is what you need to do. You need to cut off the ring a different way because he's a southpaw. So we have to adapt to what we're going to lead with the jab, and that has to change. So you'll tinker that way. But I think it's just, it's a repetitive sport. It can be boring at times, training, but you have to do it. And I think by the way he fights, he looks like a fighter who realized that from a young age, and he's just done it. And it's so, and like Mayweather, he didn't do maybe the basics as way the traditional basics, but he did the same thing all the time in the gym. He knew what worked for him, and that was his structure all the time. As boring as it may be, that's what you did. And then do little tinkers for the particular fight. Though Mayweather didn't have to do that, but I'm sure Canelo you see Canelo will do little things with taller fight. They're all taller than him, but like the huge fighters, he will just approach it a little bit differently. And against Saunders, again, he'd have to be a little bit more on the balls of his feet than he was against Yildirim or Callum Smith, because they're not as fast a mover as Billy Joe Saunders is.
Declan, I said before we came on, we've talked about this fight. I'm sure it feels like every other month since we started. Of course, sorry, I say this fight, Billy Joe Saunders against Canelo Alvarez, May 8th, likely either Las Vegas or Dallas. It was, of course, almost started last May before the pandemic. 12 months on, what will be 12 months on, Canelo Alvarez has had 2 fights, gone the distance in 1, and then last night's blowout. Billy Joe Saunders fought Martin Murray 12 rounds last December. How would you view the fight now compared to 12 months ago?
I must say I don't think my position on it has really changed that much, and that is that Saunders has got a very slim chance of winning based on what we know about Canelo. But it's an interesting point you make about the last 12 months. But I actually looked back a little bit further, basically to when Saunders won his first world title at middleweight when he beat Andy Lee in December of 2015. Since then, he's boxed Arthur Akavov, Willie Monroe Jr., David Lemieux, Charles Adamu, Shefat Asufi, the guy Caceres on the DAZN show, the YouTube show, and then Martin Murray, right? So it's not a murderer's row, and we're talking almost 6 years ago now. At the same time, since then, Canelo's boxed Amir Khan, Liam Smith, Chavez Jr., Golovkin twice, Rocky Fielding, Danny Jacobs, Sergei Kovalev, Callum Smith, and now Avni Yildirim. So he's boxed 10 times. So I just feel like if you want to go into a fight like this where you're up against it, like you are against Canelo, anyone, especially Saunders, I feel like you need a bit better momentum over the last few years. And no matter how good your camp is, it's about, that old saying, it's not about the 8 weeks, it's about the 8 years before. I just feel like it might be a case of the chickens coming home to roost a little bit, and that all of that, the last few years, and it's been frustrating for him. It's not for lack of trying. He signed to box Golovkin. He signed to box Canelo before. Stuff's fallen through. He's got injured at times and stuff like that. But I just feel like momentum-wise, it ain't with him. Certainly not the last 12 months as well. And Canelo has just got moved into this supreme position. And like Barry said, his professionalism is unreal. So it's not even like you can see him taking his eye off the ball. It's not going to be it's not going to be a Ray Robinson taking his eye off the ball and losing. It's not like that. He hasn't got this mad entourage. He's in the gym. He'll be back in the gym and he'll be training and he'll be.
You trying to say that Randolph Turbin got a lucky win against Sugar?
I'm just saying if he was 100%, Randy Turbin's not winning that fight. And I thought that if he was going to come out and stuck Canelo, it would have been last night. In that. If there was any sign that he's not taking it seriously and he's just knocking these fights off because he's got this mad contract, then that it would have been last night. We might have seen glimpses of it. It don't look like that's happening with him. And that's bad news for Saunders for me. And you're right. Last 12 months hasn't been kind to anyone. But Canelo has seemed to pulled it around. I mean, look at that. Callum Smith, he's boxing 2 undefeated world champions with a mandatory in the middle. In answer to your question, it's not good prep. I don't think it's not good prep for Saunders.
What is? Well,
that's what I was going to say. What is good prep for for Canelo? It's like, no, it's such a step up. You never know. Boxing's full of surprises, and it's all about. And if you don't step up, you say you haven't got a chance till you step up, but you don't know until you step up, and that's how it works. His style might be. People go on about his style is a nightmare for Canelo. Is it though? I don't know. I think Canelo. Billy Joe Saunders is not the biggest super middleweight. No, he's grown into the weight quite effectively, but so is Canelo because he's not really a super middleweight. So, but they go back to Lara fight, but that was 2014 sometime. I'll have a look now. There you go. It was like July 2014. So he's a different fighter now. I mean, almost like you'd have to check that he hasn't had plastic surgery to be, and it's not really Canelo. He looks like a totally different animal that he was back then. So the Canelo today would wipe out the Lara of 2014. That's the truth. If they were the same weight, he did have trouble with the sticky southpaw, but Saunders is different. And I think inactivity, like Declan sort of alluded to, inactivity in Saunders' career will probably be his undoing when he looks back of his whole career in general. But I don't know if he was super active and boxing really higher level than he has boxed, that even then would it be good enough? I don't know. No.
What I do think, though, I don't know if you'd agree, is that I feel like of all the super middleweights and middleweights, basically anyone below 12.5 stone, I do feel like he's the best place to give Canelo trouble, based with his style, because you can go back to the Lara fight. But I remember speaking to Eric Gomez after a fight. It might have been the Lemieux fight, but I remember just nicking him by the ring and just saying, is Billy Joe Saunders on the radar for Canelo? And he basically, not absolute hands up, he was like, not really, because he's not going to make an entertaining fight for us. We like people. He literally said we like people who stand in front of us, so we can. This is entertainment. We want Canelo to look good, and we want fireworks. We don't want someone slipping and sliding 12 rounds. They learnt their lesson with the Lara fight.
He's in trouble there because he's got Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant to move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one of them where he's got to the point where he's knocked out everyone who is less mobile. I know it's like, we've got two movers now, but he ain't gonna. And like you say, he's still the massive favourite. But I do feel like, style-wise, that's not his favourite. So that will work in Saunders' favour. And Saunders, we know, looks the best when he's up against it. Like Lemieux was by far his best performance. Andy Lee as well was a good performance. When he boxes lesser opponents, he can look really turgid and uninterested. And that often happens with these talented, precociously talented, in Saunders' case, when he's been doing it since he was a kid. But when you get someone who is when you're expected to lose, that's when he turns it on. But is it enough? And is it enough to do it for one night after this many years of really not doing an awful lot? I just don't think so when you've got someone as great as Canelo.
I concur, my dear friend. I concur.
So if you are Billy Joe Saunders, Barry, and you've got 10 weeks, albeit a fight you've been preparing for, at least mentally, for some time, how do you approach it? I
think, for me, it's the supreme fitness for start, because he's going to pressurize you. He puts you under pressure, and he makes you breathe with that front foot. You're never sure what's going to do, and your breathing's irregular. So but Saunders is a counter puncher, so he's sort of used to that to a level, but he's not going to have no control. So he's going to have to react to everything. I say pivoting all the time. It's my favorite thing about boxing, but for me, don't get carried away with your success. So if you can hit Alvarez or Canelo with 2 shots, pivot off and move. Don't get greedy. I would. You got to try and frustrate him so he makes a mistake. When's the last time we've seen him make a real mistake? When's the last time we've seen Canelo frustrated? I can't remember quite. It might be Lara as it goes. He wasn't, even though Amir Khan was doing quite well, he wasn't frustrated there. He knew his time would come. So he had a real patience to his work. But to try and frustrate him, that means fast shots, pivot off, close to the body so he can't hit you. You lean back and try and lead. So if you don't hit him with the first shot, don't for the next one. You got to be very, very careful with what you do. So minimum success rather than go for maximum effect. They sound silly because if you hit someone, when you just carry on throwing punches to more, but he's good enough, Canelo, to take a shot and still carry on with the movement of taking that step back to throw that uppercut. Where others get caught and they'll go off kilter with their plan and try and panic, Canelo doesn't, because he got one of the best chins in boxing, just by chance. How lucky is that? You're a great boxer. You also got a fantastic chin if things don't work out for you, and that's the problem. That Billy can punch. He's not the biggest puncher. Canelo might feel I'm just going to walk through you because because if Golovkin can't knock me out, who else is going to hurt me? I find it out to see how he wins, but I think that would be the real fast shots, the plenty of feints, and if you have one success with 1 or 2 shots, you got to pivot off fast and try and go from a different angle or get back and just keep trying to constantly frustrate Canelo until he gets a bit wild. If that can happen, I don't know, but I think Saunders got to try and make it as messy and as boring as he can possibly be for his chance to win.
But what you're describing there, though, Barry, is him going over there and nicking it. And if he tries to nick it, he ain't getting a decision anyway, is he? If he makes it boring, surely he ain't winning anyway. No,
he's not. But you can't go into a fight thinking the judges are going to be favouring this. You got to win. No, that's
how can I win?
Your control. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you want to just go in and just start swinging punches from the first round and hope you catch. No, that otherwise, if you're thinking I can't get a decision against Canelo in America or Vegas, which it will probably be, you can't go in that thinking that way. Or don't take the fight. If you think you can't win it on points, if he thinks he can't win it on points, or he can't win in a tight fight, then you either just admit it and take the money, and don't even try. What's the point in training? No, or you don't take the fight. If you're generally in it just to win it, out for pride only and not money, money's not an issue. Then why would you take a fight when you know you're not going to get the rub of the green? That's all. So you have to go in there thinking it's going to be And I think this corruption things, we over-exaggerated on more than before because of poor scorecards or scorecards that we don't always agree with. But it's not always the case. But he has had the rub of the green, Canelo, in way too many times. And Golovkin, the first fight was definitely one of them, and even the second fight possibly. But I think he has to. I think I can only see Billy Joe Saunders nicking it. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love him to come up to me at the end of the summer, find me somewhere by mistake, and just point me in the head and go,
"What?" Yeah, it'd be amazing.
I'd love it. I just can't see it.
Do you see him taking a different approach there?
No, I don't. No, because he's boxing people. He's boxing people around him. They know that they're not. That's how they win. That's how they win, isn't it? They did it with Lemieux. Okay, totally different animals, but you go out there and you back yourself, and he knows what he's good at. He knows what he's not good at. I must say, I think he is a bit of an underrated puncher, but I'm not sure if he has got the pop really to keep Canelo off and to stop Canelo doing what he wants to do for 12 rounds. But I don't know. I don't think. Yeah, that's my concern. Is it's not totally out of the question that he can go out there and he can nick rounds, and because he's clever enough and he's quick enough, and if he's absolutely on point, that could happen. But then I don't see him winning. I don't see him winning a fight in that style. I can't see that. It's a shame, and it's always a bit cynical to say it, but in a turgid fight or an uneventful fight, I don't see him getting a decision, which is horrible to say, but it's true.
But also, people point to his footwork, which is sublime at his best. Sublime. So we talk about his best, but really, when you look at Saunders' career, he's always previewed like brilliance, but only really shown against Lemieux, to be honest. Yeah. And then, if you want to be, and I thought I was there. Obviously, it was a fantastic performance, but you can also say he was suited for him, made to measure in many ways. Yeah. But still, he still had to take away his footwork, took away the power. Any chance Lemieux had was the power, and he took it away with a beautiful footwork. Constantly moved and never ran once, and that's it's a really hard thing to do. But Canelo has good footwork. It's just different footwork. He doesn't dance around fleet-footed, like a ballerina, like Billy Joe Saunders does. And he's great at it. And he can spin. He can spin on a sixpence against Billy Joe Saunders, which is something that he'll need against Canelo. But Canelo has footwork. He can be guile on his feet as well. He cuts something off really well. He gets on the balls of feet when he needs to generate a little bit more speed in his work. He knows when to. We just see him now walking people down because that's all he needs to do. He can adapt, and that's where I think. But it's all against Billy Joe Saunders. But it's in a fight like this, that'll help Billy. That'll help him, I think, to get ready for the fight. Because this very, very few fights has he been an underdog. Very few fights has he been a massive underdog, and nobody, especially now we've seen Callum. No, there was an argument who was the best of him, Callum Smith. So nobody's giving him a chance, and that if that can't spur you on, then nothing can. To be honest, I know Billy's money motivated, and I don't blame him for that. But this, I got a feeling this for Billy Joe Saunders would be more than that, because this is a legacy fight. This is to him. This puts him up there with the greats of super middleweights of all time. They will if he can beat Canelo, it puts him in just below the Carl Zagis and the Benz and the Eubanks. It puts him in that conversation with all those guys. So who knows? We'd love to see it, but we can only. We're looking for the thing is when you got to really dig deep and look at ways how a guy could beat another guy, then the chances are he probably can't do it. That's the truth.
Very valid point. Just quickly on this, in a word, is by the end of this year, Canelo Alvarez the undisputed super middleweight world champion?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That was easy. Okay, so moving up a few divisions on, Saturday morning UK time, Joseph Parker won, what was hyped up as a huge grudge match with Junior Fa. In the end, it was something of a damp squib. Let's not reflect on it too much. But the plan is now, as far as I'm aware, for Joseph Parker to fight Derek Chisora in the fight that was originally set a few years ago, postponed bizarrely with the spider bout, and then to fight the winner of Alexander Usyk against Joe Joyce, which to me sounds like a very sensible plan. He's third in the WBO, so I don't see why, as long as he keeps winning, it doesn't happen. A fight, I'm not sure. Joseph Parker is not exactly fan-friendly at times. Derek Chisora can be. Sometimes he's hit and miss. It's one of those fights for me in a way that could spark into something brilliant, but could also just kind of be quickly forgotten.
Yeah, I like the fight. I did do in the first place, and I do now. It's one of them where Chisora's always going to bring the heat, isn't he? You know what he's going to do, and Parker is I don't know. He's the boxer in the fight, so it's a classic sort of style matchup. I like it. I do know what you mean about Parker, because he hasn't really impressed for a while now. I don't know if it's a lack of. I think what it is at heavyweight, he's got a little lack of power. I think he's got a little lack of firepower, and that is a problem at heavyweight at the moment. So yeah, I like the fight. I think he could have a good go at Chisora, and I think it'll be. I hope it's not a standalone pay-per-view. I have a feeling it's going to be part of this one that they're planning in April, end of April, early May, where there's going to be quite a few good fights on the card, and I think it's perfect for that. It's one of them where Parker has to win, doesn't he? He has to beat Chisora, because he can't lose that fight and have any hopes of boxing again in the upper echelons of the division. But yeah, I'm a fan of it.
It does seem to make sense, Barry. I mean, I kind of feel like Parker and Chisora, well, they are. I mean, Chisora, I feel like he's always, if not in Last Chance Saloon, certainly knocking on the door of Last Chance Saloon, but he's always there, thereabouts. He wasn't disgraced against Usyk. But it's a perfect crossroads fight, in theory, for both men.
Chisora was done in 2013, like 15 or 14, 16, 17. I've never known a fighter to be recycled so much and to be effective as well. You tend to think, after that second Fury fight, where Fury beat him southpaw, you thought that's Chisora's career over at any decent level. That's what it seemed like. Because he was totally outboxed and stopped, and you just thought that's it for him now. But the heavyweight division is different to any other. I say it all the time, but you can recycle a heavyweight till his legs fall off. And that's not figurative, that's literally till his legs fall off. You can just keep pushing him out there, and if he can make money, then they'll keep going. Chisora's been a revelation in some of his fights. But I think it's also, the fact that he's been so competitive in some of his fights is because of his toughness. But also it's highlighted some of the lack of quality at the higher level, to be honest, for me. I think the fact that Dillian White's had 2 hard fights with him says more about Dillian White than it says about Derek Chisora. And for me, Parker is decent. I thought Hughie Fury beat Parker in a very close fight, and I didn't argue about it, but I thought he did enough to beat him. So he's always going to. I knew Farr was going to be a bit of a difficult fight for him because he always struggles with guys who move a lot. But him and Chisora, it could be I think you're right. I think you're spot on. It could be a great fight, or it could be Parker jabbing and moving and holding. And I think, if Chisora tires quick, which happens quite often, then the last 5 rounds are just literally a hug fest. It could be that. So it's not a fight that I really look for, to be honest. It's not. I don't think beating Chisora doesn't prepare him for the top 3-4 heavyweights on the planet. For me, that's the truth of it. To be honest. Now Usyk's a different level, I think, but I don't think he beats Usyk. I don't think he does. I don't. I think Usyk had. I don't think it was as close as people made out against Chisora. He struggled a little bit, but he's going into the heavyweight division. You give him 12 months to see how different a character and a different animal he is. How big he will be when it comes around to him possibly fighting. Maybe if he can beat Joyce, fighting Fury or Anthony Joshua, he'll be bigger and more used to the weight.
I think you're right, Dick, about the sort of positioning of the fight. I think it's April 24th, which is probably it's too early for fans. I think, but maybe they can get a few fans in. But Derek Chisora, as Barry said, has reinvented himself, not just in the ring, but also as kind of a fan's favourite now as well. If they can, even if they push it back a little bit, get it in with fans will forgive anything to start with. Let's be honest. If they can go and watch boxing, but they know it's a heavyweight, they know it's Derek Chisora, they know there's a possibility of something, it kind of feels like maybe the perfect post-pandemic fight.
Yeah, and I think it does go back a bit to what I was saying about being a brand and trying to be recognisable, because people, like a lot of boxing fans, know Chisora inside out and they've followed him since Sam Sexton days and everything else, years and years. But the newer boxing fans, they just think he's this mad guy, wears a Union Jack around his face, like he's nuts. Like, what's he going to do next? And people love that. I think he'll properly. I mean, he's been winding Parker up for years, and Parker is not. He's so nice, such a nice guy. He's never going to bite back. So it's just going to be one-way traffic from Chisora, and people love that. People enjoy that build-up, and they'll like him basically being mean to this nice guy on TV, and then they'll want to see the fight. I think you're right. I mean, I remember when they were going to headline 0-2 with Dillian White against Marius Vac. I mean, if that was going to headline there, then Chisora Parker is another level to that. But I would expect it to be an outdoor job, probably with some fans are allowed by then. I don't know, maybe 1,000, I don't know. But I expect it to be a sort of fight campy sort of thing. And it will land on there somewhere. It's a classic matchroom fight, isn't it? It's one of them. I mean, anything with Chisora involved in against another heavyweight has become like a classic chief support sort of job. So, it's something we've spoken about heavyweights a lot recently in the last year or whatever, and it does sum boxing up at the moment. Is that people just like that. And I guess it's always been thus, but right now heavyweights, it doesn't matter if you lost a few, doesn't matter if you had a stinker against whoever else. If you chuck it together and they basically wind each other up a bit, people are going to watch it. And I get what you're saying, Barry, that it could be a bit of a stinker, actually. Especially, I think what it comes down to is what Chisora turns up. Because if it's not a motivated in shape one, it could be bad. It could be real bad.
I just worry with Chisora. How many times can you go to the well? I know that's an old saying in boxing, but it's true. How many times can you go to the well before you just can't? And it's not just about being sharp, just physically, dig in. He has to dig in every fight, even if he's not getting hurt. It's just he's being outworked and he's having to chase people down. And how long can you do it before you become a slugger, a slow slugger, and then he's not the fastest now, but I don't know how long he can keep. Maybe he can. I don't know. He can be an enigma and go on forever. And literally, if he can, he will. I got a feeling this guy's going to be the guy who's going to have his license taken off him, because you think he would have earned enough money by now. My biggest issue with it is a massive discrimination to smaller fighters. That's my issue. Trying to make a joke out of it. They get paid too much money. These big guys. Listen, like the fact that Chisora Parker would be pay per view without a doubt. And they'll earn millions, and it's like, it's not even an eliminator for a world title. It will be for the organized, but it's not really. Let's be honest. It's crazy. I'm happy for the guys to earning good money, but it's the madness of boxing now. That we've got some fantastic smaller guys who can earn a living, and these big guys who've been around forever and fail time and time again will be given opportunities because everyone loves a big guy swinging a punch. But again, it's what works for you. We can say this about women's boxing, could be why they don't get enough money because no one wants to watch them yet, and or enough people want to watch women's boxing in general yet. It's just how it goes. But you're right, Chisora. What Chisora turns out depends. The press conference alone sells the fight. That's the truth. But what Chisora turns out depends whether we get a real fun fight to watch, or a real horrible thing that you'd want to turn off after 6 rounds. But we'll see.
Well, we should be talking about a big heavyweight fight next weekend, Dillian Whyte against Alexander Povetkin, but that has now been put back till the end of March. So it's actually a break next weekend. Nothing major happening. But you've just mentioned the smaller fighters the following week. Listen, that fight maybe smaller men, but nobody can look away from Chocolatito against Estrada. So that's one, of course, we will be talking about. Thank you both for your time this Sunday morning. And we'll see you again. Thank you all for watching. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Cheers, Barry.
Oh, yeah, cheers.